Pagoo Chapter 7. Room and board, travel included. Here's all the barnacles we were looking at last time. Pagoo climbed the tower of pink barnacles. The top of the highest tower held a very small button of a barnacle shell. Pagoo finally reached the tiny penthouse. He tapped it with his feelers, felt all around inside, and found it empty. He hopped right in. The hollow button would do for Pagoo. It wasn't exactly right, of course, because his rear had grown curved for coiling into snail shells. This empty barnacle house was spread out at the bottom. It left spaces where currents of cold water could flow in around his bare tail, but Pagoo didn't complain. His first home, it was solid cement, too. No danger could come from behind. As for protection up front, he seemed to get advice from old instinct. "Put 'em up, boy. Cover yourself." So Pagoo ducked behind his gloves, and sure enough, they made a door to his shelter. Now just let anyone try to get in. In the shadows of his penthouse, exhausted Pagoo relaxed quietly. Though both eyes would always be open, he was having a hermit crab sleep. While Pagoo snoozed, the purple starfish began eating his shellfish meal. How? He had no mouth like yours, no tongue nor teeth, but he did have a very remarkable stomach. And with this remarkable stomach, a starfish is quite direct about his eating. Just as your meat is sometimes made more tender by soaking it in tenderized liquid, a starfish has his own special solution to tenderize muscle meat. While his muscle steaks become very tender, the star spreads out his stomach like a frilled napkin, draping it over the food in the double-shell serving tray. He absorbs the dainties right through it with no smacking of lips, no grinding of molars, no vulgar gulping. When he is finished, little is left but two clean pearly plates to show that a bright star had dined at this table. Pagoo sprang awake from his snooze to find his water world changing. Already new currents swirled into his tide pool, where lower water had been calm, growing warm in the sun, stale and bitter with salt. This liquid was different. Cold, clear. It was a frothy new water direct from the open sea. Sloshing around Pagoo's new home, it had dashed him out of his trance. He promptly dropped his two-gloved door, leaned from his barnacle penthouse, and gazed about. Flood tide was nothing new to Pagoo, but for the first time he had a grandstand seat from which to watch it come. Pagoo felt a rumble of vibrations, which began and stopped far away. The rumblings came again and again, stopping beyond the rock of the mussels and the deep hole beside it. Little by little, the rolling waves came closer. Did not stop at deep hole or mussel ridge, rushed right over Pagoo and crashed against cliffs. Waves suction tugged at him. Bubbles trailed down from the surface to burst in his face. He was not afraid. This new water brought new food, and Pagoo's mouth parts were fairly galloping. He hadn't known such hunger. Fresh diatom and algae vegetables, a tasty flake or two of herring, and there went a water flea, tearing past with a teasing, wiggly whoosh. Pagoo missed. Below him, the barnacle hatches had popped open. The plumes of their legs were up and flying like banners, waving from castle towers. Pagoo breathed deeply. Oh, such wonderful fresh oxygen, such fizzling, tickling bubbles. Looking down, he saw that the tide pool had come to life. Even the sunlight was merrier. A million fragments of light went streaming along the tide pool floor. From cracks and holes came mobs of creatures. Dots with legs slivered from weeds. Larger dots joined them. Feet and feelers boiled up from nowhere, untangling into countless small animals. Little fishes darted by. A dizzying of relief that the water was no longer stale. A hunger craziness of finding fresh foods. A madness of glee seemed to swell wave after wave across the old tide pool. Even Pagoo grew doozy with it. And little wonder, for his very foundations were shifting. His shelter lurched and swayed. The penthouse with Pagoo inside was traveling. There's the barnacle tower with Pagoo on it. Oh, look. It's on the back of something else. Pagoo's barnacle towers had grown into a 2-inch smooth turban shell made by a snail, and inside the shell lived a fat lady hermit. What with Pagoo lodged in her attic, she was a landlady, though she had been sleeping when he took the room, and Pagoo hadn't known that she was living down below. She wobbled quite a bit when she walked, but of course she was carrying an apartment building. Now she squatted under her traveling towers. Pagoo's landlady knew a pert little fish from around the corner. He often brought goodies to her. He himself only picked at his food and seemed to be eating nothing at all, but that was because of his size. He was 3 inches long, but his mouth was too tiny for really good bites. Yet every so often he grew hungry for a good meat dinner. He was clever at finding chunks of meat, but they were usually too large for him to swallow whole, so he would take a piece to the landlady of Traveling Towers. Now he arrived with some meat. It might have come from the Stars' dinner, but from wherever it came, here it was. Little Fish had gone in a flash, but his food bundle left with the landlady. Oh, she knew what to do with it. It was her place to carve and serve. Well, at least she would carve. She whisked out her cutters and shredded the meat in a fare thee well. It wasn't her fault that her barnacle roomers caught scattered crumbs, or that delicate portions were delivered by elevator. The current was working just right. To Pagoo, 3.5 flights up. The small fish swished back again, not at all bashful about getting his, and the right size, too. Everyone was happily satisfied, but when a huge crab tried to claw himself into the party, everyone moved. Yes, Pagoo had been lucky in choosing his first home, a snug penthouse apartment with free seafood dinners included. Old pal said, "Wait, this fancy stuff isn't for you," but Pagoo did not listen. He leaned back in the rocky penthouse like a well-fed Raha, riding off somewhere in his jeweled elephant bodash. Pagoo Chapter 7.